A lot has happened inside of Helldivers 2 since yesterday's pretty epic day, ranging from HD2 jumping up the Steam charts overnight to the M1000 Maxigun, because I've now got it unlocked. I put it through a thorough field test, and it's time to do a full breakdown on the Minigun, along with, of course, my brutally honest thoughts. Remember to hit subscribe and ring the notifications bell to receive my future upload alerts as we now dive into the latest from Helldivers. We've got a lot to get through today, especially after yesterday's patch update and, of course, the Python Commandos Warbond release, along with that late-breaking PC file size change. But, kind of lost in all this commotion, there was a major order ongoing to take and hold more planets than the enemy, which we did win. The first battle in the war on dissidents has ended in a decisive victory thanks to the Helldivers. Sea forces working in conjunction with loyalty intervention and enforcement squads, and if you break that down to an acronym, it's L.I.E.S, L.I.E.S, have apprehended millions of dissidents across dozens of Super Earth cities. Encouragingly, citizen surveys now show higher patriotism and loyalty measurements than ever. I would think so, especially if millions of people are being rounded up and thrown into a maximum security prison city. Ground has been broken on the Center for the Confinement of Dissidents, CSOD. Once built, CSOD will hold up to 15 million dissidents, enabling thorough and secure re-education. This monumental facility will require an immense investment of resources. High Command has made the difficult decision to redirect material from the reconstruction of York Supreme to the construction of CSOD. The denial of the restoration of Super Earth is painful, another casualty of the dissident scourge. The threat of dissidents is never truly gone, but for now, managed democracy is whole once more. So at this point, we haven't yet received our next MO, and I'd expect that to hit tomorrow, but as someone that is currently grinding my way through the Warbond, 50 medals as a reward will certainly help me unlock a few items. Outside of there, we have about 35,000 divers over on Furcad Secundus, despite the target of opportunity expiring there, but according to the fine folks over at the Helldivers Companion app, we should be able to liberate that planet a little later today. Current player counts show over 76,000 divers logged on across all platforms, with a little over 50,000 of those being on PC alone, which would actually make for an excellent question for chat, because back when the ODST Warbond and Xbox launch took place, we were seeing a 50-50 split between PC and console, but we seem to be back to a 2-to-1 ratio, maybe a little higher. So if you are on PlayStation or Xbox, drop a comment to say if you are still active and diving, or if you moved on. Let us know what that reason was. I'm always interested in following the trend discussions, and your feedback would be greatly appreciated. Speaking of trends, I kind of got called out in yesterday's video comment section when I discussed the Superstore pricings, along with the point that I was making that the total store sum costs just over the normal bundles you can purchase, actually matching that of the entire Warbond, pushing players to purchase several super credit packs to kind of buy everything. And the comments I saw about how you can just farm for credits and bruh doesn't know what he's talking about were definitely showing up, but we just got the new top 100 sellers charts from Steam, and Helldivers 2 moved from number 41 to number 3 overnight. Now, interesting point here is that Steam bases their top sellers not on units sold, but dollars generated, because Gabe loves to flex about how much he's making on every single purchase Steam takes part in. So this could actually, yes, include game purchases, but in all reality, that is Helldivers 2 selling super credits to access the Python Commandos Warbond and to sell those Superstore items. And we saw this exact same trend last time Arrowhead released the ODST Warbond, as Helldivers 2 shot back up into the top 5. New Helldivers 2 update just shaved 131 gigs off its PC file size with a slim version beta, and I'm ecstatic. Here's how to opt into the patch. Helldivers 2 devs /install size from 154 gigs to 23 gigs, thanks to the help of PC port veterans. Ditching HDD optimization, 85% size reduction accomplished by deduplicating game data. And you get the point here, as it seems like the majority of the news surrounding Helldivers 2 is not actually about yesterday's patch or even the new Warbond release, but instead it centers around what outside studio Nixxes was apparently able to do in very short order, developing and releasing a slim game build for SSD users, dropping the game from over 154 gigs down to just around 23 gigs by removing the clutter of duplicated files. Now, I went over this one yesterday, and although the game's performance and stability is still far from where it needs to be, we were seeing better, more consistent frames on this new slim PC build, and overall, my rig's cooling fans didn't sound like they were being as taxed as before when the game was at its most bloated state. Also, in yesterday's patch notes, there was a mention of fixes for soft locking issues, but nothing about the more brutal hard locks. Now, the question was asked over in the official Helldivers Discord using this description, hard crashes, and we did see Arrowhead's CEO say that it is being investigated, but that they were having a hard time 100% reproducing freezes in Office, which I will say is interesting because, and I may be wrong here, but I don't think we've ever seen the studio formally respond to or acknowledge hard locking. To see that they are working on it is good news, but we need this fix ASAP because it is probably the most common question I see in my video comment section, and for some within the community, they aren't booting up Helldivers 2 until they know their PCs are not at risk. Okay, a quick update on the rest of this week and what to expect here on the channel, as I am, like many of you, unlocking the gear pieces one by one by hoarding those medals, and it's taking a little while to get everything unlocked, but I have made it now to page 3 of the Warbond, and I've unlocked the M1000 Maxigun this morning, and I gave it a whirl versus the bugs, and so far, this is the most requested item in the Warbond when it comes to posting a review, or at least my thoughts on this particular stratagem. So first up, the stats, and we actually need to turn to the Helldivers wiki because basically none of this is showing up in the game, but the Maxigun is showing a base damage of 80, AP3 or medium armor pen, 750 rounds, and it fires at roughly 1,360 RPM, giving us around 33 seconds of continuous fire from a full ammo backpack. Speaking of ammo, picking up an ammo box from a POI will restore 200 rounds, while a direct resupply, or say one from a diver with a supply backpack, will give you back 400. Two additional pieces of information are that there is no reload animation, and you cannot fire the Maxigun unless you have the backpack also equipped. Right out of the gate, you immediately notice the similarities that we already have to the Gatling Sentry, which has 90 base damage, the same armor pen 3, has an RPM of 1600, and once fully upgraded, has the same capacity of 750 rounds. So essentially, when we are using the Maxigun, we are the Gatling Sentry, just with the benefit of being able to manually choose our targets. Initial thoughts on this thing is that it's pretty unruly with a high initial vertical recoil when you start firing, but it then settles down so you can keep it mostly on target. Visibility though is difficult, especially when trying to target enemies at a distance because of the muzzle flash and blur that builds up directly in front of you when the Maxigun is going full tilt. Now, I experimented around with several different armor sets, but found that any of the fortified sets were my preference. Why fortified? Well, since you are stationary when firing, extra explosive damage resistance is pretty clutch from all the incoming mortar type rounds that will start landing all around you, and the added recoil resistance when crouched you can find on this armor is decent for helping to keep the Maxigun on target. Peak Physique would also be a solid selection here, but that extra explosive resistance on fortified gives it a slight edge, or at least it did for me. Alright, the weapon itself, the damage, the handling, etc. Yeah, let's break it all down and get honest. Starting off with the obvious question, why would I choose to use this stratagem that also takes up my backpack slot over, say, just equipping and tossing out a Gatling Sentry? Because we've already seen they are pretty much identical for stats. I find the Maxigun, just like the Gatling Sentry, very effective at liquefying chaff, which is where I think some players instantly have a disconnect from this weapon. They see a minigun, they instantly think Predator in that iconic scene in the movie, and they have a certain power fantasy of which the Maxigun isn't really able to quite match. Now, personally, I know there's a lot of questions and comments out there about this weapon not being heavy armor pen, which, I'll be honest, is a valid question. But during my testing, it wasn't the lack of heavy armor pen that really stuck with me, because what it boils down to with the Maxigun is advantages gained versus items that are lost. Let me explain. For what boils down to essentially a Gatling sentry, which I can get back off of cooldown every 128 or so seconds, I have to give up an anti-tank option. I can't move while firing. I have a blurry screen while firing this weapon, and when I do need to move quickly, as in diving out of the way last second of a stampeding charger, my character instead just belly flops unless I am fully disengaged from the trigger and already moving. And in my mind, and based on my personal playstyle, that's just too much to sacrifice for what I gain. Plus, on those higher difficulties in the game, say levels 8 up to 10, you're going to see a lot of heavy enemy types like Chargers, Hulks, or Bile Titans. And since the Maxigun is medium armor pen, how effective it can be is instantly put on hold, as you have to swap to something else to handle these enemy types. And this has a tendency to really break the flow of the Maxigun Predator-style mow through enemy hordes power fantasy. But, and you knew there was a but coming, I do think there's potential for the Maxigun. I really do. If Arrowhead can install some tweaks, starting off with tracer rounds. Okay, you want the blurry screens based on the barrels spitting out muzzle flashes for this realism fantasy, then give us Helldivers tracer rounds every, say, 3 to 5 rounds so we can get a better sense on where our bullets are headed through all the haze that we have on the screen. Number 2 change, we need to be able to move while firing. Not moving in Helldivers is usually like ringing the dinner bell for packs of hungry enemies, and while I can understand the need to brace ourselves while firing this thing, we need to at least be able to slowly walk while firing it as well. I know that full strafing and full speed would be ideal, but having a slower pace to the movement might be a good compromise here. Number 3 change, belly flopping while mashing dodge is no good. That just needs to go, full stop. And finally, number 4, the Maxigun needs an X factor to help set it apart from the Gatling Sentry. Much like the Coyote has incendiary rounds, which set it apart from the other assault rifles, this weapon needs something extra, something different to set it apart. And I'm just going to throw some ideas out here without suggesting that it needs to go full heavy armor pen. But in this case, it could be something like the ability to mount this weapon to cover for extra stability, or even some sort of elemental effect associated with the rounds, just something to define the difference between Sentry and Maxigun. As is the way it was dropped into the game, in its current configuration, the Maxigun is a 5 out of 10 weapon, maybe a 6 out of 10, at least for me, which is saying that it's pretty much just average. It does what many chaff clearing stratagems in the game already do, just with a change up of having a belt-fed ammo backpack thrown into the mix. However, with some studio tweaks, with some adjustments and slight reworks, I think this could be a solid weapon outside of, again, just going in and swapping it over to heavy armor pen. But the priority here with the Maxigun is not so much the weapon itself, but the other imposed mechanics that came along with it. All that said, and I know what I just laid out here sounded quite critical of the weapon, in groups and with several divers using the Maxigun in combo with others doing the resupplies, the amount of lead you can throw downrange in short order can be quite fun, which is a good point to make here. This is a high fun factor weapon here with the M1000 Maxigun when you're screaming out "get some" while dumping $1 billion of ammo out of the barrels in what feels like seconds. If you haven't already, please take a moment to hit subscribe and to ring the notifications bell to receive my future upload alerts. A massive thanks goes out to all of our channel members, for without your support, content like this would not be possible. And until the next one, this is LtBuzzLitebeer, signing off.